Welcome, and good morning, everyone. Uh, so a really quick ground rule first. So let's mute our mic, when the speaker is talking, so then we don't have any interruption. Uh, if you have any questions throughout the whole session, please dump it in the voice channel there. There's like this question and answer server. You can just dump your questions there. I'm just gonna real quick type it out. Your questions here. Yep. So you can just put any questions that you want to ask Kay. Although we also did receive some questions from you guys during the registration, so we will still answer them. But if you have any new questions, you can just dump it there, lah, and then we will answer it during the Q&A session. And yeah, I think so far this is just mute your mic. If you have any questions, just dump it in. Yeah. I think we can kick start now. So I'm just gonna do a really quick introduction about digital blacksmith before we pass our time to Kay. Okay. Cool. Let me just set up real quick. Okay, cool. So, good morning and welcome. This is, as you can see on the screen, this is Digital Blacksmith. It's an art school. We're not a blacksmith. This is who we are. Just a really quick introduction of who I am. So, welcome. So, my name is Siu Hong. I'm a lead concept artist working for about 9 years plus now. I was also a lecturer, a guest lecturer for 4.5 years. Then I quit beginning of this year, and then I started this school. And then during 2022, 2024, I also started a freelance company, just like a small company with my friends together to work on outsourcing during the lockdown. And then now I have this digital blacksmith school. So the reason why I started this school, there's a few of it. I know the image looks like communist, but trust me, we are not. So there's a few reasons why I started this school. I've been teaching in the One Academy for 4.5 years. I also gave like a lot of sharings about concept art and multiple college give sharing about concept art at multiple college and university in the past. I was also involving in hiring in Passion Republic for seven years plus right now. And then I realized there's a problem within the industry. Is that the talent gap between what the company wants and the fresh grad capabilities is quite a huge gap, right? So there's a lot of fresh graduates applying to studios or even just applying to where my friends working within Malaysia or Southeast Asia. A lot of the problem is that they felt that the fresh grad is not up to the standard. And when I was teaching in the One Academy, I felt that my impact wasn't great enough. So hence, I started the school. So this is Digital Blacksmith. We currently have like three main selling points, I guess. So we have the mentorship, we will be launching somewhere end of the year. And then we have the online courses, and also we have the community in our Discord. So our goal is to help fresh graduates and artists to level up by providing accelerator courses that can improve their portfolio. So that's the whole goal of the school. So online accelerators course. So the first course was the environment concept art taught by Siraj. And then right now we have Kay. So we have a prop design classes that's going to be taught by Kay. If you are interested, feel free to sign up. It will start on 19th of October. And these are some of the students' work from the first batch of the environment class. We also have online mentorship coming up. Currently we are at the recruiting phase and onboarding phase. So we will launch it somewhere around end of the year. And these are some samples that we run through for the trial of the mentorship. So in the mentorship, we will help you build your portfolio and get you insights on how you can jump into the industry. So these are some samples. We also have our Discord community where you guys are currently in. So here we have like a lot of artists or community members that shares a lot of interesting facts. We also like give free feedback on our Discord server. So if you're interested, you can just ask any question on the feedback channel, and our artists will give you the feedback based on what they know. And we also have like weekly challenges, challenges to draw and sketch, and then we will upload into our social media. And we also have free events like what you're having now, right? So we have Kay later to talk about the importance of prop design. And then last week we have a talk in MMU for the GDC club in MMU University. And we have two upcoming one, which is a roundtable talk and also a character design by Xander Smith. We also have a lot of more interesting courses and workshops and sharings coming up in the near future. So we have like environment beginners course coming up next year. We also have a 3D animation for games course coming up next year. So that's all for a little bit of the introduction, and let's move on to the fun stuff, and I'll pass my time to Kay. All right. So yeah, thank you very much, everyone. maybe I'll just stop sharing my screen and then Kay can start sharing hers and then we'll kickstart the prop design class. Sharing, sorry. Yeah. Yay.
Hello. Okay. Let me just set up my
Awesome.
screen sharing.
Let's give a hand of a round of applause to Kay in a digital way.
Thank you. Oh, that's live for you guys?
Sorry.
The screen is live for you guys, right?
Hold on. Let me see. Okay, yeah, it's live now.
Okay, great.
All right, take it away, Kay.
Okay. Hi everyone. Thanks so much for coming to this talk. I totally didn't expect so many people to come, and it's really awesome to see people's interest in prop design. So my name is Kay Tang, and I'm a freelance concept artist from London and now living in Tokyo. I've been in the industry for about 5 years, working on various AAA titles and VFX projects for clients such as Marvel, Bandai Namco, Bethesda, and mainly specializing in prop design on fantasy-based projects with a high 3D workflow. Today, I'll be talking a bit about my experiences as a concept artist and my thoughts on the industry. I will also be talking about my upcoming course that I am creating and instructing on with Digital Blacksmith, which will be starting in about a month, which Sil-Hong has just talked about. The course will be focused on what I love best, prop design, and with a focus on detailed 3D workflows from the very start, with structured reference compilation and 3D sketching to a highly polished finished design in Blender, and also covering topics such as world building, optimization, approaching ideation, so that you guys can make the best projects possible. I will also be taking a more holistic approach to my teaching that covers various larger areas of being a designer, which I don't think are discussed as often, such as working in a way that creates a compounding growth effect, individual portfolio advice, growing as an artist, putting your own voice into your art, and also taking a wider view of art and design, which I think is really important. So I'm just going to dive into some designs I've worked on previously, a mix of personal and commercial work. So here are some props from a personal IP that I've been working on the last few years. Probably the most prominent set of projects in my portfolio at the moment, where giants and humans live together. I took a lot of inspiration from traditional materials and aspects from my cultural Hong Kong Chinese background, both of those things which are pretty significant to me and I also have a lot of interest and passion for. And the different projects span stuff like, the human cooking a giant-sized Hong Kong style breakfast with congee and stuff, or making instruments, or wait, sorry, I hear some noises. Is everything okay?
Oh, whose mic is? Can someone please unmute your mic? Who was it?
Okay, I'll just continue. Yep. Or doing Chinese medicine treatment like acupuncture, or making one of these herbal medicinal teas, just all giant size. So this medicine one was the first piece I created in this world, and to be totally honest, the original spark for this piece, and therefore this whole project with the giants and world, was from various personal experiences. Like, other than generally growing up with a vague sense of Chinese medicine as a concept, like from my family, in the household, the idea of hot and cool foods, etc. For most of my adult life, until maybe a year ago actually, I really struggled with acne, so I didn't get it as a teenager, but my face like blew up during the time that you're supposed to go party and be cool, right? So anyway, I think because of that, because my mom really wanted to help me out with that. She's a very caring person. She was always worrying about what foods I should be eating, making me medicinal teas. My family would start arguing over what foods would help with it and stuff. And that ended up leaving a very strong impression on me. And then that actually ended up being kind of like the spark for this project. The giant idea, I have no idea where that came from, to be honest, but I'm glad I thought of it because it's led to some really fun ideas within the designs. I find it really important injecting personal experiences into your work, no matter what that may be. Maybe it's something that you consider mundane even, but still left a strong impression on you. And you never know if it might be interesting to someone else. But yeah, in this project, I also find it consistently very interesting figuring out how they overcome the issue of size difference and use that problem as a basis for creating the designs. I think that having conflict and problems in the world that you create is actually very key for making designs, and that is something that I will be diving deep into theory-wise during my course. Um, so yeah, here are some simple animations I made showing the functionality of the props as well. I actually created these quite a bit after I finished the initial designs, like maybe a year or two after. So I basically animated them to show at a solo exhibition I set up in Izumi, Osaka Prefecture last year. That was nearly exactly a year ago, right at the end of August, where I displayed like holographic projections encased in various glass containers. So like this was, for example, like a little film test I did when I was setting up the exhibition of like one of these kind of like hologram effects that I displayed in the exhibition. Yeah, so that was a very interesting and stressful experience. So I pretty much had like 4 weeks to set everything up for the exhibition, which it sounds like a lot of time, but I was also balancing it with freelance, and I had to do a lot of like physical moving around, like moving stuff around to set up the installation, figuring out like technical aspects, marketing. I did stuff like live art at festivals during the weekends to promote people to come because it was in an area I had basically never been in before. Before that point, I had just been in Tokyo the whole time during my time in Japan. And of course, like creating the animations for all the props that I was showing as well. I think it was maybe 8 that I had in the exhibition. Yeah, I definitely learned a lot, and it was just pretty cool because I feel like normally concept artists don't really have exhibitions. It's more of a fine art thing. But I saw it as a cool opportunity to showcase a mix of traditional materials and technology. So, for example, in the installation, I used a lot of like tatami and driftwood, and amongst these natural materials were, you know, these bright holographic design turnarounds, which was pretty cool. I kind of can't believe I managed to pull it all together. It was a lot of luck, and I'm very grateful to all the people who came. I think pretty much most of them I didn't know before I started preparing the exhibition, so that was really nice to see people support. And yeah, like I randomly met this jazz musician in Osaka when I was preparing, and then he traveled all the way to come play performance there, which was really nice of him. Yeah, so that experience aside, onto some other kinds of work. Here's a few props from the Kit Bash set I collaborated on with Big Medium Small, Water Village. I base this off, again, like traditional materials and memories from when I was a kid during summers in Hong Kong, you know, like around all of the small islands, etc. My family would take me out on the boat into the sea amongst the islands, which I feel like that left a very strong impression of me. I have this very particular memory of like, so we would go out in the boat and it wouldn't really like stop at a port or a beach or whatever. It would just kind of stop in the middle of water. I think maybe because people like to dive for sea urchins and stuff. So we just stop in the middle of the water. And one time we went down from the boat and started swimming around. And there was always like some grumpy auntie or uncle cooking on the boat, like frying noodles and stuff. And I think like the cook must have dropped a ton of bean sprouts in the water. Like I was swimming and then I'm suddenly surrounded by this like sheen of oil, and then loads of bean sprouts, which was really confusing. But anyway, again, I think like having that kind of memory, like memory anchors like that for me, create a very strong sensual throwback when I look back at it, and it's actually really helpful for design. So if you have any strange situations happen to you like that, hold on to it and use it for your work. Yeah, the visual language is quite similar to my personal Giants project, but definitely leaning more towards making stuff that can be more widely used in a larger range of situations, like while also fitting into the same consistent world direction. This was a really cool project to work on because they pretty much gave me total freedom in the designs. It was very unlike other client work, so I really was able to inject a sense of myself into it. As I mentioned before, they basically let me design the whole world, all the props and assets, provide art direction to the 3D teams. And I designed all the props in 3D, and they help with optimization for both Blender and Unreal by doing some rebuilding, texturing, blueprinting, the character art, and rigging and other stuff. So yeah, that was a really cool project. And then here's some more kind of like classic client work. So these are props that I worked on for Marvel through Luma Pictures, which is a VFX studio in LA. I did quite a few small to medium-sized props for this project, although the ones here are probably my favorite ones out of all of them. So yeah, this was for a Guardians of the Galaxy spin-off called I'm Groot, released as a series of animated shorts. I normally work on game projects, so this was quite interesting actually. It was maybe 80 to 90% the same, but also a bit different. I think most people mention speed as an aspect for VFX, like versus game production. Like the idea that in VFX you might have to churn out loads and loads of iterations compared to games, and there's just absolutely no time because of the project turnaround. Like game dev cycles are for quite a number of years, depending on the game. It could be like 3 years, 5 or 6 years, maybe even longer for some really large games. Like in comparison with film and VFX, that don't have much time. I personally didn't feel that much of a squeeze with the time, probably because my lead and the creative director and project coordinator were all really organized, so I usually felt pretty fine for time, and I was kind of just doing my usual workflow and making stuff in 3D like I normally do. I didn't end up using more like classically considered quicker techniques much, like photo bashing and that kind of thing. And considering like I was working on it as a freelancer, like they really made me feel like a part of the team, which was really nice. Like daily chats with my lead, a lot of constant communication between me and the other team members because yeah, they were also mostly in Europe, and at the time I was still living in the UK in Manchester. So the project itself also took me a bit away from my usual high fantasy, or with more of that historical basis. Although it does bleed in like a bit into fantasy in some aspects, it was also more hard surface and sci-fi in a lot of ways. Of course, because it's set in the Guardians of the Galaxy and Marvel universe. I think the projects that have a world and subject matter you wouldn't really go for yourself design-wise are usually the ones that you learn the most from. And I definitely got to try out a lot of different things and think in different ways to make things I hadn't before. Here's a bit more client work. It's a bit older. So this was for the upcoming dark fantasy ARPG game, Path of Exile 2, which was a really awesome project to work on. I think probably my favorite actually, and I wish that I could show a bit more work from it than just this. Sorry, is everything okay?
Yep, I think,
okay.
I think I was good.
Okay, I'll just continue.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so the game is not out yet, but it has a few gameplay trailers, and it's looking really good. The art director I worked under at the time, Chandelive, had a really strong vision for it that very much shows through in what I've seen so far of the game. So during this project, my AD, Chanda, he would basically put me in charge of designing an entire game level, and even creating like all of the ideas behind the concepts. Yeah, so creating all the concepts and stuff in the level. That was very challenging because it was just my second industry job at the time. Previously, before that, I had been an intern at OpusArts, which I will talk about in a minute. But I guess you could say as an intern, you always have like a bit of a safety net in a way, like even when given responsibilities and you are expected to complete work for the client. So when I joined Grinding Gear, it was pretty challenging. I had just graduated. It was 2020, so the beginning of the pandemic, which I'm sure you all remember that it was a difficult time, no matter where you were in the world, and also the studio was on the opposite side of the world to me. So again, I was in Manchester, and the studio was in New Zealand, which at the time, yeah, I planned to go to, move to. I really wanted to go, and I still need to visit. I haven't yet, but because I'm such a Lord of the Rings fanatic and I love nature, I'm just holding out until a good time. In terms of these concepts, I felt that a lot of them had very intricate detail because of the lore, and especially the part of the game that I was working on had a lot of inspiration from Aztec and Mayan cultures, which have a lot of pattern-dense designs. In terms of the processes I used, I still wasn't super heavy 3D then. I was kind of just getting into it. So I started out doing more like 2D drawings. I did use like a very simple 3D base for this one actually, but it was literally just primitives like spheres and cylinders I had stretched out around a bit and then draw on top of it. I would just do line art with a bit of paint and reference to indicate texture for the 3D artist. And then later on, some 3D models with Photo Bash, I did with these petrospheres, and then later going into like heavier 3D with this valve waypoint, which I created a detailed height map for, as you can see here. And also I did like a little bit of keyframe stuff. It was mostly props, but yeah, a little bit of keyframe environment. So here was one of the entrances to the axe, which again I used a 3D base for and did quite a lot of paint over for as well in 2D. So lastly, because I've sort of gone backwards in time while showing these commercial works, here's also some illustrations from my very first job in industry, which was Opus Arts in London, as I just mentioned. I started working there while I was still a university student because they kindly let me come in part-time, so I would go there on days that I didn't have lectures. And then when it turned over to like summer break, they let me work there full-time and part-time again when I went back to uni for final year. Yeah, during that time, I just learned a huge amount. I didn't specialize in props back then, and because it was outsourced, I was doing a bunch of different tasks for different projects, like anything from character designs for Civilization to line art environments to illustrations. Because I'm quite an Elder Scrolls nerd, like I grew up playing Morrowind, I was pretty excited to get to work on these card illustrations. I did these two over like 1 month's time, and I was very lucky that because it was DLC work, it got released only a few months later, and it meant that I graduated already with some released commercial work, even if it was illustration and not concept art. I also really appreciated that I could contribute something small to the Elder Scrolls IP, and it was just a really cool feeling to see my work put in a final game for the first time, especially so directly because it was an illustration. Yeah, so the world on the left was all 2D, like photo bashing and painting on top, and it went through quite a few different changes. So I think at one point it was nighttime, and then I completely changed the lighting, thanks to my art lead, Beyond's direction. And then the piece on the right, Altar of Spellmaking, had a very simple 3D base. I think it might have actually been my first like foray into using Blender, because before at uni I'd been using Maya. So I just learned Blender on the job and pretty much just put some untextured cubes together, rendered it out, and then photo bashed textures on top. Did a lot of painting too. Oops, sorry. Yeah, so moving on, now that I've talked a bit about my work and some of my experiences, I will talk about why prop design. I think that when people approach wanting to do concept art or be a concept artist, prop design is not normally their first thought. And especially when people start out doing art, I would say most people I know were just kind of like doodling anime characters in their textbook when they were supposed to be doing homework or paying attention in class, right? So just in general, I think people are drawn to wanting to depict people. And then maybe if you start delving into concept art and, you know, you see all of those pretty huge landscapes or environments online with a little person in the foreground, and you think, damn, I want to do that too, and then maybe you start trying out environments. And yeah, that was pretty much how I started too. I like drawing people, I moved on to painting environments, and I think that was into design too. And honestly, when I started out trying to design props, I was a bit like, what the hell is this? Why is it so difficult to just depict an object that looks good? But then once I got past that bump, and I applied feedback to my work, etc., I realized that if you can make a prop that looks believable, it can show you the world in just one object. It can show you so much character and story and a very clear idea just in one object. I'm going to elaborate a bit further on this, but yeah, for a lot of reasons, I just think that knowing how to design props is a bit understated most of the time, despite how powerful it is. So what I found working in various concept art teams is that the environment design team is in reality designing props most of the time. The classic keyframe environment pieces you see around are absolutely something needed for game production. You know, otherwise, how would the level artists know how to arrange anything? How would the lighting artists know what to do, or like what the final look should be, and so forth? However, what I'd argue is even more needed by studios is solid, well-rounded design of assets that go into various game levels. If a game has a strong set of well-designed assets to dress their world and environments, you know, all characters and, you know, maybe they have hero items that indicate a strong sense of story and game lore, those can form a much more fleshed out world than if you were only looking at the bigger picture. And it's also a more practical and logical way to flesh out the world because everything is literally made of assets. So generally in the type of work I've been asked to do, like the game is in production phase and the art director asks for something quite specific. So for example, the environment team is asking for a statue with these dimensions to go in this level. And then they will provide me with a brief with screenshots from the current Unreal build of where the statue is going. Like maybe it's a white box stage and they just have like a cube or placeholder there for the moment. Maybe they'll provide some reference photos and maybe some contextual information and parameters. Or maybe it might not be that specific yet, and it might just be given a mood board and then the functions the object needs to have. But it might even be up to me to come up with the idea of what it is. I found that a lot when I was working on the Path of Exile too. So for example, it could be a chest that you open up for loot, but they don't want it to actually look like a chest because that looks too generic. So then I would research, what could be a potential replacement that doesn't look so generic, while also having a mechanic where it can open. I've been lucky to work on projects where often I've been able to input myself into the designs and the freedom for ideation in this way. I do honestly think that it's a really great thing to be able to put all your energy into just one asset for a few days or like a period of time. I find designing environments can feel almost a bit zoomed out sometimes in terms of how much detail you can actually fit in, especially on a time limit. But when I've worked on projects where myself and the rest of the team are able to really put that time into our assigned assets, the end result just comes out really polished. And also that moment when you see the final result in the game or film is just really awesome. You can literally see it and point it out on the screen. Yes, that was my part to design that. So here's a few examples of how like the props that I showed earlier that I did for I'm Groot, I translated to the final project. So when the episodes came out, it was super cool to just like catch a glimpse of some of the things I worked on, and most of them were pretty one-to-one, like especially this bonsai tree here. One thing that really caught me off guard actually was last year I was like with my cousin and aunt getting food in Hong Kong, and then like I was just going to the toilet, and then there was like a big figurine of Groot with a couple props I designed on it near the toilet. So yeah, that was like really random and unexpected, but cool to see as well. So moving on, I also think that the role of a concept artist is in the midst of evolving, and as I'm sure a lot of you are aware of, we are no longer just people who draw stuff during pre-production. There's more of a focus on 3D, working together with the other art teams during the production phase, and how we can make the pipeline more efficient. Because of how programs have improved our industry's workflows over the years, I believe that the gap between concept artists and production artists is closing. So previously, 3D was just kind of being used as a tool to make a stronger image. But since not very long ago, it's just been like evolving, growing so quickly as a tool. And for various reasons, like making it easier to iterate with different angles, getting stronger lighting and textures in that look more realistic. Even for stylized work, you can get some really strong, complex forms in, and it can give a lot of clear-cut, clean shapes for people further down the pipeline, and like a 3D reference. I would say, especially since Blender had that significant upgrade from, I think, 2.79 to 2.8, which I feel made it a lot more artist-friendly, and because, obviously it's open source and free, it's just been getting better and better. Even only in the last 5 years, there's just been huge jumps, and also so much information from the user community to learn from, as well as so many resources like scripts and add-ons. And more artists are utilizing 3D in programs that previously would never have been touched by a concept artist or designer. Like, Unreal is one that's coming more and more into usage, especially since UE5 came out, because of its ability to handle higher poly meshes, and again, the accessibility of the program because it's free. So during my experiences, I've done stuff like jumping in the game's Unreal build and then figuring out what props should be added to make the scene more alive, and then directing the level artists based on these observations, giving them some feedback on the level. I've also rebuilt my assets with optimized pieces with the environment modelers have created, integrated prop designs onto raw film plates so the director can visualize it better. There's a lot of things like that which I didn't expect to do when I first wanted to be a concept artist, and it's good to be aware of how the requirements are changing and evolving while still maintaining your passion and voice in your own work. You can see from concept artists like Leo Alvaro how he's taken his skills as a concept artist who uses a lot of 3D to make cinematic scenes, and taken that further into projects that go past just concept art, like his short film Revenge, that was, I think, pretty much all made in Blender, and now he's also developing his own game with a few other people, like Agni, Village of Calamity. Vitaly Bulgarov is also one of my favorite examples of this, as he did a huge amount of prop designs for the game Mortal Shell that him and, again, I think just a few other people made together. So it seems like he would design these props and then they would also serve as the high poly meshes to be used in the game production too. So, you can see the value of developing stronger 3D skills, like not only as a tool for concept art, but also because of the scope of where you can take your personal projects. And I do think that the quality that a small team or even an individual can produce when they're truly passionate about something can be of a really top caliber. For this reason, during this course, I will not only teach about prop design, but have a strong focus on utilizing 3D in Blender. So using a 3D workflow can seem slow at first, but at the end, it can help give such a high fidelity result, allowing you to show the audience or client your designs from multiple angles. It means you can reuse the asset or small components or parts you created later, whether that's in an environment or within another prop. It means that in the long term, it is quicker and it gives a higher quality result. You can present your work better too with simple and effective lighting and rendering setups. So related to this, I will encourage people to skill-wise, workflow-wise, even life-wise, try to create a compounding effects in the long term. So the more intentional work you put in now, the better and easier your life will be later. So setting up things in a certain way now, even if it saves you from repeating the same task that takes only a few seconds later, it will help a huge amount in the long run. Technical issues are a big motivation killer when designing because all you want to do is create, but putting things in place to prevent that will help a lot. As you learn and generally through your journey as an artist and designer, you will see really big strides in not only your technical abilities and speed efficiency, but also in your personal life as well. So, for example, learning how to rest and then really focus during your work time will mean that you can enjoy your life outside of your career and artistic passions too, which I think is extremely important. It's also good to acknowledge that this journey is not a smooth curve by any means for anyone, and there will be a lot of times that are discouraging. During these times, it's really good to build a support community. So, for example, it's really awesome that there's this Discord community here provided by Digital Blacksmith, and then also loads of other places, peers and mentors who can help guide your work and bring you back up again during these difficult moments. Everything is an experience, especially the times where you're pushed out of your comfort zone. You will learn the most. So, circling back to the topic of why props, I think that props are a real foundational pillar in design. They're the best way to learn design fundamentals or principles as they're smaller scale. And if you're able to successfully design a prop, I think that actually really builds a strong foundation for approaching creating an environment or character concept later. Because you need to be able to create anything that the client asks for. And I would actually put forward an argument that everything you design in film and games is a prop, if you really think about it, and it just crosses over into so many different subjects. So, for example, I've been asked to do a lot of statues over a few projects, because there's quite a common asset used in fantasy scenes. If I didn't really understand human anatomy or bodies, I don't think I'd be able to create something that looks like a carved human shape or humanoid shape. And if I didn't know environment design, I wouldn't be able to create something that looks like a realistic statue. And if I didn't understand how to design props, I also think I wouldn't be able to successfully understand how to design a well fleshed out environment on the flip side that looks alive and has a lot of story to it. So while learning props, and especially in a 3D setting, there's so many things you have to consider, like proportions, layering of details and narrative, forms, shape language, texturing and lighting, leading the eye, and much, much more. Although in an environment there's some things to consider, such as composition, those things are still something you do consider in a way with props. Like props have their own composition in a way, even if it doesn't appear to be the same as environments. And yeah, in reality, pretty much what I said before, creating an environment, it really is like creating a really big prop, especially when it comes to stuff like building interesting architecture and filling the scene with various assets and items. So As you can see in the examples here from the various artists' work, you can see what I've been talking about here, where the scope of props can take you in a lot of different directions with your art and how it can scale up to something much bigger. So maybe if you work on a small hard surface sci-fi prop like this and you really nail it, then from there, I'm pretty sure you'd be able to tackle a mech or another hard surface item or like a sci-fi character like this, or like the prop that the character holds and wears. You can also take it in a different direction, like you could go from this intricate staircase piece here to, like part of a building or aspects of environment design, architecture, like game maps and levels. As a further example of this point, you can see here in this piece that I made that this environment, if I had not thought about the various props that go into it, it wouldn't really be of any substance. So this pot brewing medicine for the giants, if I didn't like zoom in and consider, like, I didn't consider how it would function properly, like how the humans have to climb on it, and like have this platform here to be able to navigate, like taking off the lid and stuff. If I didn't consider that, and also same with like here, like the fact they have to get up here to the giant's back, if I didn't think of like zooming into this elevator and cart and like how it works, this would not come together as a fleshed out environment. So this shows how you can utilize prop design to make stronger work in other areas as well, should you choose to go into these other areas. And yeah, pretty much the same here in this next example with Will Bowers' work. Again, you can see how his knowledge of props has really elevated his character designs to a really rich and interesting level. You can see he has really strong ideation and research skills with stuff like these like chameleon sensor things, or like this like sapper helmet sensor. These sensors and equipment for like this Spec Ops and sapper character, and it really gives you a sense of believability. So yes, prop design is definitely the most all-encompassing thing you can learn that will push you to learn to cover all your bases and become a more well-rounded artist, while also being a specialist if you focus your energy and self-marketing correctly into the place that you want. So you also learn a lot of shortcuts on how to create various things as well, like as you learn more 3D. But also, props can be really satisfying to create as well. Mostly for just how much story and details you can fit in about the world that the object exists in, and the amount of information that a small design can contain. So here's some props here that I really like for this reason. So stuff like Ivory Pan's Ambrosia project, where it has a really strong basis around honey, and just really small, like simple stuff like, this honeycomb bag, this kind of genius. And, like it's sealed away with wax and can hold these little items. Same with this snowfield project by V Wong, like all of this, research equipment that this character is going to be using, that clearly indicates, like harsh terrain and weather conditions. Probably my favorite one here though is this, like artificial stomach, by Ilka Kupita, and also artificial stomach expansion pack. And it makes you think, what kind of world is this where people can buy an expansion pack to an artificial stomach? Like, is it so they can fit more food in? How easy is it to insert the stomach? It must be pretty easy, right? Maybe it's so high tech that already you can do it at home, or everyone is practically half mech already, so you can just open your torso up and chuck it in. So now I'm going to be speaking a bit about the upcoming design course, The Power of Props, that I'm doing, which will be starting on October 19th and is running for 10 weeks. So the outcome and aim of the course is to create 3 medium to large prop designs from the same world. This is to allow you guys to make a really fleshed out and coherent project that reveals a lot about your world and perhaps any story that you might want to tell. I really do believe that creating a larger world or your own IP can be really beneficial in a wider sense. The main thing should be to explore and create something you're passionate about, but doing something like consistently for your portfolio creates a much more coherent image of you as an artist, and it will help a lot with self-branding. I've been working super hard to create a lot of content for the course. So every week there will be pre-recorded lessons and tutorials, which goes in depth into topics such as I've mentioned before, stuff like ideation, world building, the role it plays in creating a coherent and consistent project, how diving deep into it is pretty vital for creating really interesting design, what makes good design, how to see reference with an objective eye, and of course, plenty of demos surrounding how to set up things efficiently in Blender, and of course, showing my workflow from the very beginning. So maybe potentially, you could be thinking, I want to make cool designs, but you have no idea where to start, or you don't really have a workflow yet that works well for what you're visualizing in your head, or maybe you feel like you've done plenty of art studies and you feel pretty confident with your ability to draw and model maybe, but you feel unsure about how to put that into something new and interesting and something that speaks of who you are. Yeah, so if you feel like you might be struggling with these, during this course, I will be showing my thought process and workflow from the very beginning with, brainstorming and research to, like 3D sketching, like starting out, to a highly polished finished end result with coherent steps for everyone to follow along with. Here is the prop that I will be showing my process for, like this printing press, which would fit into my Giants IP. So you can really see here what the jump will be from the beginning to the end of the 10 weeks and what you will be able to achieve. I've got a general overview here over these next slides with what modules I'll be covering. So we'll be starting out with figuring out what kind of project you want to pursue, gathering the appropriate reference, and generally preparing with learning some theory and kind of thinking introspectively about your own goals and what you want to say with your work. And then we'll be diving into Blender and just start sketching out your ideas straight in 3D. And then to all the steps in the workflow to create your design, including using 2D as a tool to like quickly overpaint or sketch out ideas for your next steps, fleshing out all the ideas in your prop so that it has believability and functionality, to texturing and adding layers of detailing, potentially sculpting, and then pushing to the final with lighting and rendering and overpainting in Photoshop. I'll also be covering some very basics of how you can use 3D animation to show different poses of your props, like if you want to show functionality, if you like maybe wanted to do a moving turnaround, for example. And also, of course, how to consistently brand and format your design sheet so that it creates a coherent project. I will also teach how to manage scenes in an optimized way so that you can work more organized, more efficiently, and cleanly within your own scene, so that your PC doesn't slow down, because not everyone has a beefy PC setup. I actually, for example, prefer working with a gaming laptop because it's portable, and in the last couple of years, I've been moving around a lot. So anyway, it is good practice to have good scene management, and it's not something that I think is taught very much. Like how to set up in an organized way, and also how to clean up at the end of your design to make sure that you can pass it on to the next person down the pipeline, like, the 3D art team, your co-workers or client, and then they won't be confused about where everything is and why it's difficult to select stuff, etc. I will also talk about branding and marketing yourself, like building a freelance career, and do my best to give tailored advice to each student, because for stuff like this, general advice is fine, but everybody's portfolio, goals, and life situation is different, and I think it can be very beneficial to create a structured plan together so that you can reach your goals with as little friction as possible. And because of that, I will be treating the class like almost kind of like a mentorship for each student. So there will be a lot of focus on in-depth feedback on the assignments. Those will be weekly, every Saturday. I think, especially once everyone's projects have kicked off, this will definitely be the most beneficial part of the course. And I think being on a course like this, as opposed to learning by yourself, like the feedback and being in a group and seeing your classmates' progress is also really motivating and helpful for learning. That's what I found in the past too. It's definitely the best environment for pushing yourself out of your comfort zone and to make a big leap in your artistic progress. And if a student ever has issues, like you're stuck with the work or you want additional clarification on anything, I'm very happy to discuss anything, like any worries or also anything fun, like even if you're not sure if that's related to the project or course. Like, just ask away, I will do my best to help you out, or we can just have a chat about anything random. So, yes, just to summarize, 3 prop designs from the same world. Hopefully then you'll have a clear goal on how to move forward with projects that you might want to pursue later or what you want in your career. Tailored feedback on your projects, lessons on designs, tutorials, demos, showing the entire workflow, individual advice for each student. In terms of required programs, these are all free except for Photoshop, which if you don't have, there are definitely some other more affordable and similar 2D programs, which I'm sure most of you will have already. It'll just be to do some sketching and compiling our render tools at the end. The main one we will be using is Blender. I recommend before starting the course that you have at least some basic knowledge of how to use it and basic modeling skills. There's plenty of tutorials around if you don't yet, or if you haven't got much modeling experience, I'd recommend just taking household objects around you, like a desk, rice cooker, oven, that kind of thing, and practice modeling those. In terms of Blender add-ons and custom UI, I use a few add-ons, but nothing that changes it significantly from vanilla Blender that much. Just a few things to speed up the process. I personally don't use hard ops or quick tools, or modeling tools like that, because I come from a sub-D modeling background and I prefer the control you have over the geometry and shapes. Like, say if you or the client want any changes to the object, I find sub-D a lot less destructive. But if you're good with using that kind of workflow, then feel free to go ahead with that during the course. Also, with supporting programs, obviously Pura for reference boards and brainstorming DAZ3D for basic posable humans to put in my scene to show scale function of a prop. I also recommend a program that you can sculpt in, such as ZBrush and or 3D Code. It is possible to sculpt in Blender, of course, and also use some cheap add-ons in some cases to create a sculpted look, so it's also no worries if you're not able to access these. Other than that, I also recommend Quixel Bridge, just because it's really easy for adding basic shaders and small props and decals. I'll also be sending plenty of resources when you guys start for stuff like what add-ons and program bridges I recommend to create a smooth workflow. I won't be recommending anything with a crazy price tag, like mostly free ones and then also a few cheap paid ones that aren't necessarily necessary, just like a recommendation. But yeah, so that's it for my talk. I believe after this there might be some Q&A, so I'll be having a look at any questions you guys might have asked, which I think Sil-Hong has been collecting during my talk. And also address any questions that you asked before when you signed up for this talk. Thank you very much for listening, and I really appreciate you all being here. I hope some of my points have been some food for thought or motivation for your individual pursuits. If you have any questions after this talk, like say after the Q&A, you suddenly think of something, like anytime, feel free to just like contact me on Discord or like on one of these platforms. Make sure to mention that you're in Digital Blacksmith so that I know that you came to this talk and I have a bit of context. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Let's give a round of applause to Kay. Awesome, everyone. Thank you so much. Cool. I guess we can jump straight into the Q&A.
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay, I guess we can start off with the one that they sent through the registration form. I think that'll be easy. So if any one of you still have any questions, you can either type in the chat room in the call, or you can type it in the questions and answers channel there. All right. So first question. Let's start off with the easy one. I don't know why someone asked this, but someone asked, do you know Alberto Mego?
I have not met Alberto Miego. That would be cool if one day I could pick his brain a bit, but no, I unfortunately do not.
I wish I could have talked to him as well. All right, second one. Okay, I think this is quite an interesting one. How to strike a balance between spending time coming up with unique props versus preparing generic props, as much as you can fill up the space due to project time constraints. Or rather, how do you approach the situation? Let me just type it in and put it here.
Okay, so I think that's really dependent on a lot of factors. So, okay, if it's commercial work, then I will just do what the client says. If it comes to ideation, like the client wants me to come up with an idea for the design, I will do my best to come up with something within the parameters that they've set for me, and that usually ends up being something quite interesting anyway. If it's for personal work, I don't see the point of creating something unless I find it interesting. Um, I don't see why someone would use up their time to create something generic, like unless it's like purely for practice purposes. But in terms of like developing a like design for my portfolio to go into a project or to go into like like personal IP, I think it's much better to spend ages like considering an idea and then actually having a good idea than like churning out 10 generic props. Um, I mean, there could be an argument for both. Of course, churning out 10 props, like, you probably learn a lot, and, um, you know, then it's like practice, like almost like studying. But again, I do believe in kind of like razor focusing your time and energy into like kind of like the work smart thing, like focusing your energy into one thing and just really nailing that, if that makes sense.
Okay, cool. Cool. Yeah, that does make sense. I have a follow-up question regarding that.
Yeah,
This is my own personal question. So if let's say
yeah.
like because you mentioned about or you just do what the clients need, right? So if let's say the time is really tight, so most likely you won't be using 3D, you'll just be sketching it out real quick and then send to client, is it?
So actually, like in most of the projects I've worked on, they actually are okay with me using 3D and not just like sketching something out
Mm,
and sending it off to them. But I do think that maybe I might have mentioned previously, like during the talk, that I'm normally hired like for a maybe slight like maybe the project is already undergoing production stage. Like it's not necessarily like pre-production. It might already be in production and they're already quite clear on what prop they want in a particular place. Um, so actually, I'm very lucky that I'm not in that situation that much. I of course have. I feel like I have been in some situations where, yeah, they do want something quick. Um, but yeah, again, like I don't think. How do I put this? Sorry, I'm struggling to form my thoughts. I do think that Oh wait, sorry.
it's all right, no worries.
My brain. Um, your question was like, what if you need to sketch something quick for the client?
Yeah, yeah.
But then again, in that situation, you would probably be given like the parameters of the brief, like what you want to be sketching. In that case, then yes. If they want you to do lots of iterations, like that's what they want, then I think that's a really good skill to have to like to be able to iterate
Mm,
and like come up with lots of different versions of that thing.
okay, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much. Okay, let's jump to the next one. This will be this one. When you create a character, the first things that you think about is the storyline or a theme. Then after that, you will think about the storyline. So okay, I'm guessing what this person is trying to ask is that when you're designing something, do you think about the storyline first, or a theme? Then only you think about the storyline. If I'm getting it correctly, that should be the question.
Um, it's probably more towards like I don't know if theme. Probably more towards theme, like just kind of like a general spark for the idea. Rather than thinking so deeply about the storyline, I think that's actually something that you develop like as you're working on the design, or maybe like as like yeah. So like maybe a bit at the beginning, once you've kind of set the spark of the theme, then you kind of start thinking about like more narrative details, and then you can kind of put that into your work, and then that might spark even more details. That would be my approach to it.
Okay, okay, cool. Thank you very much. Next one. what are the key elements that make a prop not only functional but also narratively rich?
Prop not only functional but also narrative rich. I think that both of those things actually go very much hand in hand. Normally, if you think about the function, then that leads to being able to come up with narrative details. Because it's like you have to think very carefully about, how do these parts fit together? What might, if someone was using this prop, what might they place in this area? What might they place here? So yeah, I think those two things are actually very much almost the same thing, in my opinion.
Okay, okay. Cool. So they're in a sense they are all connected. Um,
Yeah.
okay, okay. Cool. All right, next question. What what are the things that we should take care of if we're designing props for a 3D modeler?
What things do we take over designing props 3D modelers? Wait, so does that mean like you're doing a design in 3D and then you're gonna pass it on to a 3D modeler? Is that probably what they mean?
Yeah, yeah, I think
I
that's what.
think yeah, so I think like in that case I guess the thing is that with a 3D modeler, like they do know that your job is to design, and not think so much about stuff like topology. They might like completely rebuild the prop and not like use any of your mesh, but just in terms of them being able to navigate your 3D scene, kind of like how I mentioned before, just keeping stuff really organized in folders in Blender, and also like at the end, potentially like joining larger objects together just so that it's easier to like be able to select and navigate the scene. That's that's probably the main things that I can think of.
Okay, okay, cool. Thank you so much. The next one would be. No, let me just copy this. What is your train of? Okay, let me just paste it first. What is your train of thoughts? You start with a new concept. Do you have a set of patterns, either following them loosely or strictly, for churning out the concepts, or do you just go with the flow?
Um, I would say that it's probably more towards following a set of patterns, but obviously over time those patterns will change, because workflow is always something that you should be evolving and changing, or you might even be forced to change it, like say if the program updates and like the function changes or something. So, but I would say like generally like the steps that I follow are quite similar. I might also like take shortcuts depending on like what the prop is. So like if it's something I'm more familiar with, I might kind of like do two steps together at the same time, where before I would have just done like one step at a time, one step at a time. Um, so, and I guess I was starting with a new concept. If it's the idea stage, I would say it's a bit more loose when coming up with ideas. So that might be a bit more going with the flow. Like because I think yeah, definitely you should let your mind wander free when you're thinking of ideas.
Okay, okay, cool, cool. I see. So I'm guessing there's not really a strict rules, but more of guidelines to follow. Is it?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much. The next question. Is there any concept artist focusing on vegetation or plants, maybe alongside creature design? If so, what do you usually call them? Props design, creature designer, etc.?
Um, I'm not sure if there are. Um, I think that probably like a prop designer would design the vegetation or plants, right? Rather than a creature design. Yeah, rather than a creature designer who would just design creatures. Um, yeah. You would probably agree with me on that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think in the modeling side, probably they have something that specific for vegetation and plants. think it's called foliage artist, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So the modeling side, I think there are actually like vegetation artists, but not designers, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Cool. The next questions. How to create complicated carvings and patterns efficiently.
So what I actually use 3D Coat to make the patterns in my designs. Carvings I also use ZBrush to make like more sculpted, um like to give a more sculpted look to my work. And also like if I want to make like a detailed height map, like I showed with the Path of Exile work, I would I would draw out the height map in 2D, like make the height map in Photoshop, and then use ZBrush to implement that height map onto the model. It's a bit difficult to explain without showing, but yeah, that is roughly what it is.
Okay, yeah, I get what you mean. I get what you mean. Yeah. Yeah, if anyone, if the person who asked this question want to know more, you can sign up for the course. Cool. I think that's all the questions from the questionnaire. Anyone else has any questions on the call? You can type it out, or you can just unmute yourself and ask the question as well. Okay, someone is typing. Siraj is typing. Or maybe I have a question as well while Siraj typing. How
Okay.
often do you get, like, how much of the time do you get to create props asset? Because to create something in 3D probably take a little bit longer compared to line drawing sketches. So how long does it have? How long do you have in terms of time frame from the client works?
I think that's really so dependent on not only the prop itself, like what size it is, how important it is in the project, but also like maybe how focused the client is on their vision. So, like, wait, again, it's a bit hard to explain this without showing anything, but like for example, like when I was working on the like stuff for I'm Groot, like the bonsai tree I showed, I think I pretty much had that done in maybe let's say like 2 days. But then because the client was a bit unsure about like what direction to take it in, then like there were loads of changes, and that ended up stretching out to a month. But then like on the flip side, there was like another prop I showed from that project. It was like this like turret thing. Again, I think that took me 2 days. I handed it in, client was happy, and it was fine. But then like there's some other props where like it might be a lot bigger, and it might even take me like a couple of weeks. So, and especially if it's like a hero asset, like maybe it's really important in a scene, they're happy for me to spend like a couple of weeks on it.
Okay.
Yeah, and it also depends on how much information they might give me at the beginning. So, for example, with the turret, I had like a very basic 2D sketch to work off. So I kind of could quickly put together like something basic from that, get it checked, and then like continue working on it from there and like building out all the details and stuff.
Okay. Interesting. So it seems like there will be a lot of communication between you and the client during this whole process, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Thank you so much for answering that. All right, we have new questions coming up. So Siraj asks, what would a 3D sketch look like? Like how basic is the mesh? And I'm supposed when showing to client, a lot of it is supported with references, but how do you communicate the idea so they are confident with the sketch actually?
Right. So, what would a 3D sketch look like? I think like in my head, I think of it as like 3D sketch and then block out, and then I would say that I'd probably more likely like show Hmm. I think that's a bit tricky actually because so there are some. I think a lot of the art directors I've worked for, thankfully, they can kind of like visualize something. Like if I just show them like something quite basic in 3D alongside some reference, they can kind of usually see the direction I'm taking. But of course, like showing something too basic, like you don't want to show the client just like the primitive, right? Um, so he tries to take it more towards like a more blocked out stage maybe before showing them and alongside some reference. I might even like put some really basic like shaders on the 3D sketch or block out, like just from Quixel or something. Like just throw them on and then it's easier for them to visualize.
Okay, cool, cool. Does that answer your question, Siraj? Okay, I think he's still thinking. All right, then let's jump to the next question first. How do you balance functionality and aesthetic in props design? Are there any key differences between designing props for live action versus animated productions?
Sorry, I have a bit of a sore throat. How I actually think that again, kind of similar to how I said before about functionality and narrative details being very much hand in hand. I actually think that the functionality and aesthetics are very hand in hand as well. I think people are often like form versus function, and it's uh, almost considered as two different entities, which it can be, especially like maybe more towards like hard surface sci-fi stuff. Like a lot of the time, it's very much like you have to think so much about forms, but I still think that like if you really think about functionality and you flesh that out, then the appearance and aesthetics of the design actually like really comes together the more you think about the functionality. Um, but again, obviously, like we're not engineers or product designers. We're not making stuff that actually works. So we're kind of creating a appearance of believability of functionality. So is that, and there's like I think that there's so much room for being able to move stuff around in a flexible way, and that's like really one of the joys of our profession. Um, yeah, I'm not sure if that answers the question, but that's I guess like my thoughts on it. And in terms for are there any key differences between designing props for live action versus animated productions? I haven't like worked on any like really how to put this like animated productions that have a very like stylized sense to it. But I guess maybe because my portfolio is more realistic, I'm not normally hired for that kind of projects. I imagine that it's probably like the principles are the same, but you're just following that art direction of the production, right? That's how I imagine it anyway.
Hmm. Okay, cool, cool. Thank you so much. I hope that answers your question, Skylar. Cool. Okay, I have a questions. Uh, so okay, wait, I have two questions. Which one should I ask first? Okay, let's go with this one first. So I think AI is a hot topic right now. Just want to pick your brain a little bit. Is there any impact in your work when it comes to prop design? Is there any changes in like let's say communication with client, or is there any even implication of like using AI into all the recent client works that you have?
Um, in terms of the clients I've had, none of them have wanted to use AI. Um, what I have heard from other people, like from peers, is that like maybe at the studios they're working at, the studio is trying to implement AI. Like they might hire an AI concept artist,
Oh.
but then quickly they realize that they actually can't do the job properly. Like they literally, they're asking them to do something and they literally don't know how to do it because they're just relying on the AI.
Mm.
Um, so Yeah, I do think that it probably is affecting the industry generally. That's something that's quite undeniable, I think. But at the same time, I kind of hope that, companies that try stuff like this, like try hiring AI concept artists, etc., quickly realize that it's actually a waste of money and time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, I don't like with the technology. I think there are some usages to it that could help with the workflow. I'm talking more like, generating textures for 3D and stuff like that. I think it would be really helpful for things like that. But in terms of like creating concepts from start to finish, I absolutely don't think it can do that. So yeah, that's my thoughts on it.
Cool, cool. Thank you so much. Yeah, because on my end, usually the client who wants to use AI is more on like just for communication purpose. Like they have some sort of idea, they just generate something real quick and then they send it to us and then they ask us to,
Mhm.
you know, based on something like that and then generate something new from there. Yeah, so I'm just
Yeah.
curious. Yeah, on the freelancer side, do you guys get that? Okay, yeah, you answered a lot of the questions that I have in my mind. Thank you so
Hmm.
much. Cool. Next question. Siraj, I have another question. Do you work in personal projects simultaneously to when doing freelance, or you carve out a few weeks or months of time to do it?
It depends on the project. So, I've had I think I've had a couple of projects in the past where I was working on it like, not Monday to Friday. So it might be like I'm working on it 3 days a week or 4 days a week. So in those cases, then, I would be doing the client work and then I have like plenty of time during the week to also like keep working on my portfolio and personal projects. And also, but I do think that definitely the best time to work on it for me is like between client work because that's also the time where I might be looking for work as well. So it might be good to, just like reflect on my portfolio and, like work on my own projects and that kind of thing.
Okay, okay, cool. Personal. I have sort of like a follow up question with that in terms of
Hmm.
planning the time part. So how do you manage your time as a freelancer? Like, do you have some sort of schedule or some sort of guideline that you have? Like, okay, maybe 1 month you only take like maybe three project maximum or something like that.
Um, I generally don't like to pile projects on top of each other that much. Unless it's the case of, as I said before, like maybe there's one where I'm just working on it like 3 days a week or something, and then there's like another thing on top of that. But definitely not like both of the clients think I'm working for them Monday to Friday. I wouldn't pile them like that. Especially because like I do think that especially because of the pandemic, more and more freelance clients are treating their freelancers like not really like freelancers like they were before, but almost more like remote workers. So they kind of might expect them to have like on hours, like expect them to be available at certain times. Like so I think that maybe it has changed a bit. I also think that it's not good to just like pile so much work. I do think that actually there is this interesting thing that I noticed happens. Like sometimes there'll be a period of time where there's no work and you're like, oh my god, there's no work. And then suddenly, like within a week, like three people will contact you saying, hey, can you work for me? And I'm like, I can't. um, so yeah, that seems to be a pattern that happens to a lot of freelancers. I'm not sure why. But yeah, I think because I've experienced burnout before, and it was quite a difficult thing to get over, to be honest. I really believe in kind of like maintaining maintaining a sense of like your work life balance and making sure that you get rest so that you can actually work efficiently during the time. Because I don't think people, how to put this. I think there are a lot of people who are like, oh, I'm gonna work for like 16 hours, and then I really doubt that they're working for 16 hours, right? Like in all of that time, how much efficient work is actually getting done? I would actually argue that someone who is working for like 3 hours might be doing more work than the person is doing in 16 hours. So, yeah, sorry, I feel like I derailed a bit there.
Sorry, it's still on the topic.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's still on the topic.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's really nice to know. Yeah, because I'm always curious, like, how do you guys manage time in the project? So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Okay. Andrew asked something that I want to ask as well. What was your burnout like, and how do you overcome it?
I think like when I was burnt out, it actually caused a lot of like complicated feelings inside myself where I kind of thought, oh no, like, do I really want to do this career? Like, like, do I actually like doing this? Is this actually my passion? Did I just kind of like make this up in my head? And like, I would kind of like, I would try to like open up Blender and then, like move stuff around. And I would just think, oh man, like this is actually really difficult. Like I'm just moving a cube around and this is really difficult. And it felt so ridiculous as well because I thought like, why is this so difficult when there's so many actual problems going on in the world and I can't like move a cube around. But I think like a really big part of overcoming it was actually to like it was a lot of things. I think it was making sure to not only see myself as an artist, because I think a lot of artists, they get so obsessed with the craft that they just don't like remember that they're human, and like you forget about your personal life. You might I feel like it happens to a lot of people. You might like, you don't see friends as much. You might not spend as much time with family, like because you're just like so obsessed with your craft, and it can get really unhealthy, and that is obviously what leads to burnout. So letting go of that, like letting go of this image that, an artist is all I am, and in doing so also like letting go of any like shame I felt about it, like because obviously like the more I try to force myself to, do stuff, again like using that example of me trying to just like move shit around in Blender, just like the more I tried to like force myself to do it, the more it kind of like created this belief and shame in myself that like, why can't I do this? And like actually like allowing myself to just let go of that shame, it just suddenly like one day it felt fine again, but I had to let go of that shame first. So yeah, I mean I think it's like a lot of things, obviously like I think resting properly is really important. I think a lot of people, they think that they're resting, but actually their mind is still on the work, or like they're attempting to relax. They might be trying to like watch something or like play a game, but they're just still thinking about it, or still worrying about it. So learning how to switch off, learning how to like create space for yourself and to be kinder to yourself. I think that's how you can overcome it, or maybe also prevent burnout.
Okay. So Siraj asked, what's your resting strategy?
Resting strategy. I think like I think it can be really good to get out in nature actually. So especially if you guys like you live in a city, like a build up city, I think like the energy can be really busy, and it can be really easy to kind of like zoom in on things that don't really matter. But I think, yeah, just like going on a trip to nature, like don't bring any like work stuff with you. Like just go with some friends for a couple days, like go camping or something. I find that kind of thing always just makes a really big difference. Obviously, like I'm not gonna go camping like every week, but like just doing that occasionally, that really helps me. And then in terms of like day to day, I think making sure to carve out time for myself. So stuff like journaling or like making sure to go outside so that I'm not like just a gremlin in my house. Um, yeah, just like going out on a walk or something. Just like allowing myself to just like think. Also like staying active as well, like doing stuff like yoga or like going to the gym and stuff is really helpful.
Cool. So in summary, we all gotta go out and touch grass. We can't just
Yeah.
stay at home. Yeah. Cool. I have another questions. So in your opinion, because you're sort of like focused a lot on prop design. So in your opinion, what is the demand of prop design in the industry? Is it really high? Is it like there's a lot of high demand but low in how to say low in talents? I'm just really curious about your thoughts on this.
Actually, yeah, I would say that I think it is quite high in demand. It just doesn't seem to be. Again, as I mentioned in my talk, like usually people who are assigned as like the environment design team, often like we are literally just designing props the whole time. So um yeah, I think it's just kind of like not that apparent that it's so needed. And yeah, I definitely do think that because of that, and because people again like they don't really think of it as much of a specialism as much as stuff like characters and environments. There definitely aren't as many people. Yeah, like I can think of some people who are just like really really good at what they do. But I think that there, yeah, there are not that many people like that. I think. I think there's definitely a lot of room for more, in my opinion.
I see, I see. Cool, cool. That's good to know, yeah. Because I guess a lot of people understand that characters and environments are more flashy, so it sort of attract more people to go towards a direction where props
Yeah.
are something can be a little bit more generic sometimes, or things that people just look past, but they are equally important for
Yeah.
any game development or any even
Mhm.
movies. Yeah, okay. Okay, cool. We have about like 5 more minutes. Anyone else has any other questions to ask? Yeah, anyone else? Let me think if I have any questions. Okay, someone is writing. Andrew is typing. Question. How do you yeah, this is just a curious question as well. How do you because from what I understand and what I learned about you is that you were from London and then you moved to Tokyo. So how do you build the connection there? How do you build the community there? Because I saw you've been going a lot of like events, you have like exhibition going on. So maybe just want to pick your brain a little bit. Like how do you put yourself out there when you go to like a new country and then you set up your working space there?
Yeah. So I guess like what I did when I came to Tokyo, especially when I moved here. Like I think when I just came here last year, like just kind of as a trip, I wasn't thinking so much about like building up connections here. But yeah, when I moved here, like I made sure to I just like messaged some artists on Twitter. I met up with them. Um, Even though my Japanese is still not very good, I still just pushed myself to meet with them anyway. And they were like really understanding about it. Like we were still like able to communicate fine. And then like from there, like with one of the people I met up with, we ended up starting like a series of meetups in Tokyo called Thunder Gatherers. Um, so yeah, from there, like more people, like maybe they saw it online or maybe they heard about it from friends. Like they started like coming to that. And I'm really happy with how it's been going. I'm always like really surprised by the turnout. I think like 5 people are gonna turn up, and then like a lot of people turn up every time. So that's really awesome. Um, in terms of the exhibition, that was a bit of a strange occurrence actually. It's actually like a series of very, how do I put this? Very specific events that if it didn't happen, then the exhibition wouldn't have happened. So it was like I was staying at this place, yeah, in Osaka. I was just there on a trip with like I was meeting my friend who was flying in from Korea. And then like when I was staying at the place, I noticed that there were. So I know there's like only 5 minutes left, so it might overrun.
No worries.
I noticed that like in the place I was staying at, there was like tatami, but instead of being just used as flooring, it had been used as like painting canvases. So yeah, like I just saw a bunch of like paintings on tatami all around. I thought that's so interesting. I've never seen someone do this before. And it's because like the owner of the place, who ended up being my exhibition host, his I think he's like maybe fourth generation or third generation something. Like a tatami factory, or like tatami making in his family. And then because he's an artist, um, he kind of decided to mix those two things, which is really cool. And then also because he has like this event space that he hosts like a lot of like festivals and markets in and stuff. Um, like we got talking. There was also another artist staying in the place who mentioned that she was going to do her own exhibition, and then she said like, "Oh, why don't you guys like do an exhibition here?" Um, so it was like a really random occurrence of events that had nothing really to do with like the concept art circle. But you know, even though it was very random and unexpected, I'm very glad that it happened. So you know, you never know what will happen if you just like ask people. Because you know, I could have just stayed there and then like not asked anything to the guy about the art and the tatami. So yeah, it's definitely worth asking.
Cool. Okay. Okay. Now I know the backstory.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Okay, we have two more questions, then we will end the session. So one is, ever have times where nothing comes out of your head, something like having no ideas when you need to make something.
Um, I think probably everyone has those times, right? With personal work, I think you can kind of exercise ideation, and it's kind of like a muscle you can build, like coming up with interesting ideas. At the same time, I do think it's worth like putting time into your personal life so that you can come up with something a bit more authentic to yourself. But in the meantime, also building that kind of ideation muscle, like just like through various thinking processes. Sorry, that might sound really vague. It's a bit difficult to fully explain.
Okay, I hope that answer your question, Andrew. I guess it's sort of in related to the go out and touch grass pass. You know, like when you go out and experience things and see things, or just give yourself a break. It will help with the ideas of churning up more ideas in your head. I guess. Cool. Last questions. Will you be doing more mentorship and classes in the future?
So like I guess this batch begins yeah in about a month in October. But I believe that there will be more batches after that, but maybe Sohong can talk a bit more about that.
Cool.
I don't think the date has been set for the next batch. So it's just the first batch for now that we have set.
Yeah.
In terms of mentorships, that's something that I'm definitely open to doing, and it's something that I have briefly discussed with Silhong as well. So yeah, if you're interested in that, please feel free to like contact either of us about it.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah, so the first batch will be happening on 19th of October. And then we will have like two more batches coming up next year. So if let's say you couldn't make it for this batch, we have two more batches next year. At least this is the confirmed thing that we have right now. In terms of mentorship, yeah, we are still in the midst of launching it. We will launch part of the mentors somewhere around end of the year first, then only slowly we'll expand to more and more mentors. Yeah, I hope that answers your question. So yeah, I think that's it. That's the end for today's sharing session. Thank you so much, Kay, and thank you so much, to everyone who joined our session today. Let's give another round of applause to Kay as well.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining and like listening this whole time.
Thank you. Yeah. So I hope everyone learned something from the sharing. Yeah. If you want to know more, if you want to learn more from Kay, please do sign up for the course, or just keep an eye on our Discord for any other upcoming workshops or any sharings or any courses. Yeah, so thank you so much, everyone. That's it for today's session.
Thank you,
Yeah,
everyone.
thank you. Enjoy your Saturday. For Malaysian,
Thank
enjoy your long
you.
weekend.
Bye. Too.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye. Thank you. Take care.